getting questions from you all, rightly so. So it's good when you ask questions. So questions are actually acceptable. And you've been asking a question of like, Simon, what is the church doing with all the immigration circus that is going aloud? Now, all I know, I went to seminary to be a pastor, so I can't answer those questions. And our leadership team doesn't have legal professionals, so we agreed, what if we got someone who is a legal professional and be able to answer some of those questions? Like, there's a lot going on in our country with the new government leadership, and you've been asking questions like this. So I think it's only like, let's say, we can just provide a little bit of like some wisdom here that we pastors don't have on that area. And so we thank you so much. Sarah's son is sings in the choir here, so I'm glad that he's able to come and help us with this. So we reached out to Sarah and I say, could you help us, like tell us, give us a one-pager, bullet points, what we should be thinking about, how we should be what we should be going on in our minds and our hearts as we pray that, because rightly so, the church should be caring for us when we have those kind of needs. So just want to give Sarah just a few minutes, just share with us what we should be thinking about as we navigate these difficult territories of immigration, and then from a legal standpoint, and then maybe one or two questions after that, and if you talk more, she'll be out there somewhere to talk. So let's get up for Sarah just here quickly. Thank you, Sarah.
God is good, and all the time.
God is good.
So I'm going to keep it short because I've been told it's Super Bowl. We know it's Super Bowl Sunday. I'm just going to touch on a few things, mostly things that affect us as African community. There's a lot of change that has happened, but I'm just going to tackle what affects us. Maybe in the future we can talk more about everything. But just to introduce myself, I'm called Sarah Wairimu Brooks. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for 10 years. Sometimes I can't believe it's been that long. I specialize in immigration, family law, and personal injury cases. Those three are my specialty. So let me stand. So I just want to talk about a few things. There's been a lot of things with Trump administration. It's only been, 2-3 weeks, and we've seen what's happening. And there's more yet to come. This is just the beginning. One of the things that there's a lot of misinformation. Every day there's a lot of panic. People are circulating things in the social media, giving the wrong advice. So I'm just going to tackle a few things. One of the things I'm going to tackle real quick, and this is just passing through, is the birthright citizenship, whereby Trump is trying to make sure that if you're an immigrant or you're here, not really an immigrant, if you don't have good status or you're here on temporary, like we know visitors who come, they're pregnant and things happen and they give birth, that you don't get citizenship. I don't think we have to worry about that. And the reason being, already it's been challenged in quite a lot of 22 states. Out of those 22 states, we already have 2 states that acted quick and they've halted it. They've only halted it for now, meaning the kids still get to continue getting citizenship. And the reason this affects us as a community is, if this rule is done and citizenship is taken, what happens to our kids down the line? They will lose benefits like healthcare for those of you with chips in the future. And also it will be difficult, as you've been seeing raids in school, it will be difficult for our kids to enroll in school. So, but we don't have to worry about that. The only worry we need, because this is one of the things that we know it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. And when we get to the Supreme Court, right now, out of the 9 justices in the Supreme Court, 3 of them are Trump appointed. So out of 9, with 3 being Trump appointed, we still have an upper hand because we have 6. Likelihood is that even when it goes to the Supreme Court, at least from a legal perspective on us lawyers, we speculate is still going to stand. Trump is going to lose on that, even if it goes to the Supreme Court, because he only has 3 judges. Likelihood of the other 6 judges flipping is very, very minimal. And this is also because it's part of our Constitution. If you look on the 14th Amendment, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are citizens of the United States. So this is one of the things that is the Constitution. And for that to change, the only way that can change is going through Senate and Congress and to pass. Likelihood of it, we don't think it's possible. So no need to worry much about that. Now, we've seen a lot of mass deportation. This is where us as African community, we will be affected because we do have a lot of people who have final deportation orders, especially for us parents with kids, or we have aunties, uncles, relatives who come here at a very young age as students, and they get themselves involved in crimes and all that. It's the time we step up and we mentor them to stay out of trouble. So when it comes to this, we've seen with the Trump order that he recently signed is that he's expanded the powers of ICE carrying out raids and deportation. During the Obama administration, Obama put up safety harbor places like churches, schools, and hospitals, whereby immigration could not go to those places. A lot of the time, like in the borders, we have a lot of churches that harbor these immigrants where they come there, if they're attacked and if they run away and they get into the church, the immigration would not get into those places. But with Trump, he's taken out that safe harbor. So how does that affect us? In that, we need to be vigilant, and I'll tell you some of the things you can and can't do when you encounter immigration. So that is one of the areas that we know is going to affect us as a community, because now they can go to schools, they can come to churches, they can come to hospitals. A lot of the time, we've seen a lot of these incidences actually happening in places like Chicago and Florida. Florida especially, they've gone to quite a number of schools. If you watch news, we've seen our neighbors here in Oklahoma. A lot of the school intendants in Oklahoma, they're allowing ICE to get into schools and ask their children about the immigration status or where their parents are from, because they figured out if they target these kids in school, then they may be able to get the parents. A lot of the time for schools, they're targeting the parents, because once your kid is affected, then you have to show up there because to get your kid. And I will also be telling you some of the safety measures we need to take as parents. And this does not only apply to us as parents. Even if you are an immigrant, you have good legal status. Some of these safety harbors I'm going to talk about, they affect us in a broad way, not just in immigration, in real life. What happens if you're incapacitated and you're sick? Do you have a safety plan for your kids on who's going to take care of them? I'm going to touch on that. The other thing that we know may affect us is we have a lot of military planes deporting people. On this particular one, I don't think as Kenyans mostly may be affected. This is happening a lot in the people close to the borders, because for them to get a military plane from here to Kenya, of course, maybe they may detour to other countries, neighboring countries, but they have to fill that plane. And a lot of the people who are being deported by these of course, there's collateral damage, but a lot of them are mostly people with major criminal offenses. It could affect us as Kenyans, but I don't think from a legal perspective, the feasibility of it and the financial responsibility, we are going to get one of these issues of whereby they fill a military plane to deport people in Kenya. Now, we have the Guantanamo now. They are deporting people in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. This could affect us as Kenyans. Why? Because when they get you, as we've seen, they've done so many arrests, and they're filling out of these jails, immigration detention. So what they've resorted is they're doing Guantanamo. The problem with Guantanamo is there isn't like big facilities. So they're building temporary tents. In other words, it's like they're treating with no rights. They're building temporary tents where they're putting you to feed you, because with Guantanamo Bay, they can hold more people there by just building this temporary, and it's quick because these are temporary tents, just like the way you would go to camping. So this one we could see some of us, if they're arrested and they're out of facilities, they could send people. So this, I think, is one of the things that may affect us as African community. So. And then the other issue with Guantanamo Bay is when you go there, it's a remote area. You don't have access to contact your family. You'll also not be able to have access to contact your attorney. Now, let me talk about a safety plan. The reason why I say about a safety plan is with this immigration, everybody, and when I say this, it's just not for people with papers or without papers. This covers us in general. It's good being immigrants or just being a parent. It's always good to have a safety plan. Some of the safety plans that we need is you need to identify emergency contact and memorize their numbers. Because sometimes when you get arrested, if you don't have a number you can call, it could be a challenge when you get your phone. Because when they get you there, they will take your phone. So please, have an emergency contact and memorize that person's number, at least 2 people. The other thing is, provide your child's school or daycare with an emergency contact to pick your child. Have somebody, if you're in that situation, who can go pick up the kids, because the last thing you want is your kid after school being there and they're given to CPS, comes picks them up, or they're put in a foster home. Getting your child out of foster home, by the time they get them out of foster home, it's a process. Normally, I've seen situations where it has happened and we can easily get them because we'll need to identify a relative. They have to come check their house to make sure they're fit. But you can avoid all this during those times before they can give your kid away, once they take the kid to CPS or they put the kid into a foster home. It's a process to get your kid out. Even if they get out after a day or 2, they will be traumatized. So this is just in general as a parent. Always have somebody who can pick up your kid from school. Authorize the school to have that person. And I would hope this person could be at the same time the person who you can call as emergency, or if you call them, your emergency contact knows who to call. That way that person can know to go pick up your kid from school. The other thing is, provide authorization in writing for your emergency contact to make medical and legal decision for your kid. Because when that situation happens, if they have authorization, this is where power of attorneys come. They can be able to act for you while you figure out all the situation about your detention is being handled. And I said this is not only, applies generally not only for immigration, even in real life. You know, have somebody if you're incapacitated. I've seen, God forbid, couples have traveled, they've both gotten into an accident, because most of the time the tendency is you'll put your father or your spouse, but what happens if both of you, you're in a car accident and both of you can't reach you're not able to go pick up the keys? That's why I said these are just real things, not only for immigration, but even in real life. And then the other thing is, collect your document in a safe place. Sometimes you're stopped, you don't have your documents. Have your documents in a safe place. This includes that power of attorney that I talked about your kids. Have it somewhere. If you're detained or in your situation, you can easily tell somebody, go to my house, open this drawer, and have them organized. Some of the things that you need to collect your documents is keep your identity information and financial information in a safe location. Why? And I say this not only for immigration being detained, but even in real life. If you have your financial, this person picks up your kid, you need them to have access to things they can do for you. Like, for example, if the kids need to be fed or there are things that your kids need to be taken care of, have those things ready in advance. Then the other thing is, gather your documents showing the length of time you have been in the United States. One of the things about Trump is he's doing what you call expedited removals. And these expedited removals are happening for people who've been in the United States for less than 2 years. You see, it's a violation of the law, but unfortunately, this is one of the things that he can do with his executive order. So what happens is, if you're arrested, you have to show that you've been here more than 2 years, even if you're out of status. How this helps you is it avoids you from going through the expedited removal. They can detain you, you can get an attorney, and you can fight your way in. So always have those documents. This document includes things like, for example, utility bills, tax returns. I know some people don't have Social Security, may not be able to have these things in hand, but keep things like bank records or other documents that can show. For example, if you don't have a Social Security, you may not be able to file taxes, you may not even have your utility bills. Have something like a lease. Even if you're staying with somebody, your relative, have them draft a lease for you. That will help you when you get arrested. If it's a relative you're staying with or somebody, they don't need a social to write for you a lease, but have it ready with you. At least you can show, and it will help also your attorney when it comes to defending you. Medical records also, keep those at least, even if you don't. Those are some of the things that you can keep, even if you don't have a social. And then, as I said again, I cannot emphasize this, have an emergency contact. Know where to get this document easy. Because even if you have an attorney, the first thing they need to get these documents. Now, let me talk about encountering immigration, what you can and what you can't do. Let's say, for example, first and foremost, this is where the misconception comes and misinformation on social media. A lot of people, if you are not a US citizen, first, let me start by saying everybody needs to identify themselves, right? Even if you're stopped for anything, a traffic ticket, the police officer asks you for your name. You have to identify your name. But what is identification? Just saying your name is enough, right? That's it. If it's a police officer, the police officer has no right to be questioning you about immigration status. One of the Trump policy is he's expanded it. Now ICE is using police officers to track down immigrants and arrest them. If you're stopped and it's a police officer, the police officer has no business asking you about your immigration status. Or you need to tell them, if they ask you to identify yourself, you identify yourself. The other thing is this: as long as you're not a US citizen, if you're a green card holder, and this is where misinformation is coming, if you're a green card holder, you have a work permit, you have a pending, you are required to carry those documents with you. If you encounter ICE, not by police, but ICE, if you encounter ICE, they can ask for those information. So keep in mind, I'm differentiating two things. I'm differentiating police, and I'm differentiating immigration officer ICE. Because with police officers, their work is to enforce just the local law. They ask you if you've been a traffic ticket, they give you a traffic ticket, and you go your way. If you have a warrant or they think it's a crime that needs to be arrested, they arrest you, they take you. They ask you about your immigration status if it's a police officer. Tell them you're exercising your right and you choose to stay silent. Do not discuss your immigration status with a police officer, even if they ask you. But if you encounter ICE, because ICE are there to enforce immigration, then with them, if they ask you about your green card or your work permit if you're in status, give them, show them. Why do I say that? If you don't show them, they have a right to pick you up, fingerprint you to know your status. They can do that. They will fingerprint you. And that will only cause a delay, and by the time you're released, they realize you're wasting their time. It also has wasted your time. So what happens if you're encountered by ICE and you don't have immigration status? It's a bad situation. Either way, you don't have immigration status. So at this time, the best thing to do is, again, this is the one time when you don't have to talk to them. You exercise your right to be silent. Why? Because in some of the situations, once you get arrested and attorney comes, we have what we call credible fear, where we can file things like asylum for you. You may be a victim of maybe, let's say, domestic violence. You may also be a victim of one of the visas that a lot of us Kenyans don't know about and don't use, which is the U visa. So don't talk. Wait until an attorney gets there. Tell them you want an attorney. Of course, they're not going to give you an attorney for immigration. They will arrest you. But let the attorney handle it. And the reason why I say is when they're trained on how to kill your case from the inception. So if they come and start asking you about, do you have a fear of anything? And you say, no, you've just healed your case where we could have filed an asylum case for you or a VAWA case for you, because they will be recording. So if you don't have status, that is the one time, because it's already bad as it is, you don't need to talk to them. Just tell them you want to exercise your right to silence and you want an attorney. Now, I saw something circulating, and this is the last thing I'm going to touch. I'm going to touch two last things because they affect us a lot, especially the asylum application changes. But before I get there, I saw a circulation about some lady who used dual passports and they traveled to their country, coming back. Apparently, immigration officer took their passport. Let me say this. Immigration, when you're coming back, even if you're a citizen and you encounter this immigration, they're there to make life difficult. They have no right to take your passport just because you use another passport to enter in another country. What does that mean? I travel a lot to Kenya. When I go there to avoid paying visa, and so that my son, who's a US citizen, can get a visa waiver, I use my Kenyan passport. That is not an offense. There's nothing, that does not give them a right to take your passport. The only time the immigration officer can take your passport is under three circumstances. One, If the passport is expired, damaged, or altered, at that time they can take it to verify if there is an issue with it and to identify it. Because why would your passport be altered? Maybe it has, or it's damaged, they can't see clearly what is in the passport, that's the only time they can take it. The second time they can take it is if the passport is suspected to be fraudulent. If they suspect you obtained your passport to be fraud, they can take it. The third reason they could, this is for people with outstanding warrant or legal restriction on their travel. For example, we all know if you're running behind on child support, they can they can take away your US passport. So that is one of the circumstances they can take your passport if you have child support or there's some debts or national security concerns. That's the only time they can take. But just because you use your passport, you use a Kenyan passport, like for example, I left here, I entered Kenya with a Kenyan passport, I come back here, I'm trying to enter with my US passport and it doesn't have that, my US passport doesn't have that entry stamp, they have no right to take your passport. But sometimes I tell people, it's always easy to make your life, just because something is not right doesn't mean you also have to make your life difficult. So in those cases, I tell people, have your passport close by your Kenyan passport. You just need to show them, hey, yes, they may be asking because for safety reason. A lot of terrorists use multiple passports to hide in between where they go. They will live here with one passport, they get to another country, they transfer with another passport, so they may want to ask you about that, and that's just a safety concern. So you just need to show them your entry stamp in the other passport that you entered that country. And then they will ask you, did you travel to any other country other than, let's say for example, if it's the Kenya, and you can tell them no, or if you went, you can explain to them. If let's say you went to Kenya, you crossed to Tanzania, they would expect to see also that Tanzanian passport to show where you went. This is a concern technically about that. But as far as dual citizenship is concerned, the US recognizes dual citizenship. The only thing is immigration expects you to use their passport. So most of the time I tell people, and this is a travel tip, when you're leaving the country, like let's say you're going to Kenya and you're going to use your Kenyan passport, when you check in, they ask you for passport details. Enter your American passport during check-in. When you check in online, enter your American passport. That already is a technicality. It qualifies that you left with your Kenyan passport. Of course, when you get now at the airport, the agent, the travel agent, the gate agent will want to see that you have a valid way to get into Kenya because they won't allow you. That's when you show them your Kenyan passport. Of course, you get to Kenya, you enter with your Kenyan passport. But coming back, be calm. You don't have to. But if they give you a hard time, just remind them there's nothing wrong in the law or the constitution that says you cannot enter another country with a different passport. Now, I want to talk about asylum. This is the most important topic that I can talk about because I see so many asylum with us Kenyans. We are in a difficult situation where filing asylum right now is risky. I don't mean you can't file it, you can file it, but it's risky. Some of you can remember, in December 4th, 2020, when Trump entered, he did an asylum, he changed asylum. He was pretty much trying to take away asylum. That's the one thing he really wanted to take away with. And he did it whereby asylum cases are usually a safe harbor. Because you file, they can even take 10 years. During those 10 years, you're able to get your work permit, work without having to worry. But Trump is changing that. He's revived that memo of his, the executive order from December 2020. He signed it on February 3rd, 2025. And he said, going forward, asylum will be adjudicated within 180 days. Remember, to get a work permit, you need to wait at least 180 days. If your application has not been processed within 180 days, you apply for a work permit. That's how over a lot of people have been able to get their social security numbers and work permit as a stepping stone before they figure out a plan B. Now with this, we're seeing them, you file, and within 30, 60, 90 days, you're called for an interview. What most people don't know about asylum is if you go for an asylum interview and you're denied, your asylum is denied by USCIS, they put you on removal proceeding and deportation proceedings. From my 10 years practicing law, I can tell you this, over half of the people who are in removal proceeding, at least for us Kenyans, is because of the asylum application. They filed asylum application, they were denied, and they ended up in deportation proceedings. So over half of those are through asylum, and then the other 40% is mostly some encounter with law enforcement through maybe a criminal offense, DWI, something, and they end up there. The other 10%, mostly a collateral damage, ICE happened to be somewhere, and they just got caught. But a lot of us Kenyans, over half of them is through this asylum application. So this time, it is very risky to file an asylum application unless you have a solid, strong case, because this is the quickest way you're going to find yourself in deportation proceedings. And the same way you get into deportation proceedings, you get into a judge, they put you quick on the calendar, and like the other cases that stay long in the immigration court, and you end up in deportation. So right now, tell your friends, if they are going to file asylum, they have to be very careful. It needs to be a solid case. You are better off not filing that asylum. You have even a better chance of staying here even if you don't have papers than doing this asylum, because within 6 months, you will find yourself in deportation proceedings. So please, let's be careful when we do tell people to do asylum. So at this time, I'm going to take a Q&A, a few questions, or anything else you need me to clarify. I'll be more than glad to do it. Any question? Anybody has something to ask? Some rumors you've heard or something you've heard and you need clarification? If you need a private meeting, I'll be outside. I'll give you my card. We can always set up consultation down the line in my office. But if you have a question, feel free to ask it now. Okay, it looks like I covered pretty much most of the stuff. Oh, there's one question.
Since you're saying they're coming to school, I'm a teacher myself, and I think about my students all the time. Would you advise all parents here, okay or not okay, to have some photocopies of documents in our child's backpacks, just in case they raid the schools? Things like maybe, like you've said, like maybe something about the mortgage to show that we've been here for long, or is that what you would advise us to do? Just in case they come to the schools, at least kids have, can show that their parents have been here for long.
To answer that, that's a two-pronged question. Let's talk, if you're in good immigration status, you don't need to go all that through unnecessary, and your kid is also a US citizen, born here. You don't need. Remember, a lot of these kids, it's not truly the kids they're going after. They're going after their parents. So if you're in good, you just don't need to. Also, my thing is, if you're not in good immigration status, remember what I said, you don't need to talk, because you don't know if you're digging your own hole. So why would I want to provide evidence to give immigration a reason to think I'm illegal? Let's say my kid is a US citizen, born here, but they have not gotten to the age where they can file. I'm out of status. I definitely don't want to give them information to suspect that Cole's parent may be, my son's parent, you're out of status. Because remember, it's their work to come and look after you. So don't give them ways to do it. I only say this as a safety measure because when they get your kid, they ask the parent to come pick up their kid, right? Because that's the person that you are there. That's why I said have another third person. If such a situation happens, you're not in good immigration status, you don't have to go pick up your kid. You can call your friend and tell them, hey, go pick up my kid. Apparently, ICE. You don't have to show up yourself. Even if they tell you, hey, you're out of status, this is ICE, you need to come. You don't have to show yourself. Let me talk about something I forgot, actually, now that you bring that question. I forgot to talk about what happens if ICE comes to your house. If ICE comes to your house, and these are the times whereby don't be opening the doors if you didn't expect somebody. Even if you expected somebody, try first and identify who's at the door before you open. You don't have to open the door for them unless they have a warrant. Remember I talked about they're now using police to disguise themselves. through the Trump, they can come through the police. But even if the police are not going to have a warrant to come do an ICE raid. ICE need a warrant from the judge, which is hard to get, because even if you're illegal, you're entitled to go through the removal proceeding, through the court hearing, because you might have a defense, and you can plead your case with the judge. So they need a warrant. A lot of the time they'll come show you they have a warrant, but it's a warrant signed by a supervisor. That is not a valid warrant. The only warrant which is very, very hard to get is one issued by the judge. And the only time you'll see some of these warrants issued by the judge is for somebody who has a prior deportation order, or they have a very serious crime. Other than that, ask them to slide it under the door. If you live in a place where they are not able to slide it under the door, go to your window. Tell them to show you. If they don't have that warrant, tell them, no, you exercise your right to remain silent, and close your window and walk away. You don't have to open the door. Even if they try to threaten you with all sorts, stand your ground, you have your right. They are trying to look for ways to entice you to leave. Don't. If you meet them in public, as I said, and you don't have the papers, then you still have your right to remain silent at that time and let the attorney see what ways they can do or how they can. Because some of the time they'll ask you for questions that you answer them, and then when we come to even try to do what we call a bond hearing to, get you out, we can't get you out because you said you didn't have any credible fear. They ask you, do you have people who depend on you? You said you didn't have anybody, you don't have a sister, brother, so please don't talk. So in those cases, we tell people, remember, a lot of these kids, they're not really going after the kids. They're going after the parent to call you to come pick up your kid. So because they know they've tried to get a hold of you, they're unable to get a hold of you, so they figured you have a kid. The quickest way is to get you through the kid. That's why I said, have a safety plan. Just because ICE is there, they've arrested, you just need whoever has the power of attorney to go pick up your kid. So you don't need to be giving them hints that you're, if anything, and you don't have paper, you don't need to be giving them evidence that to even suspect. Just because they come see my kid, how do they know my status, what they are, until they talk to me? So don't send your kids with anything. Maybe the only thing you can do is make sure that emergency contact has that power of attorney to go pick up, and they're listed in school. Because remember, at school, if you have somebody else listed, they just need to come, they check, and they see, without even the power of attorney, as long as you've authorized somebody else to pick up your kid, they will give your kid to that person. Yes, go ahead.
My next question is in regards to parents that have older children, and I'm talking about over 18. Can a child file papers for a parent? And if the process has begun, does that protect the parent in any way?
Okay, let me answer the first question about siblings. Yes, siblings can file for each sibling, but I'll tell you something. The likelihood of it working for you is very, very minimal. And the reason why I say it works for people if you file for your siblings in Kenya, then they will come. But if they're here, most likely they're not going to benefit from it. There is a technicality which people don't know is you need to be good legal immigration status in order for you to adjust through a sibling. If you're not in good legal immigration status, you have to leave the country and do consular processing, which is processing at the embassy. The problem is, no attorney is going to advise you to leave when you've already overstayed, because the moment you leave, it triggers the bar for overstaying. So a lot of those siblings, quite frankly, they don't work because you can't benefit with them here if you're out of status. As of right now, the waiting time for siblings to get a visa available is 16 years. Tell me which person will have stayed in this country with a temporary visa and be in good status for 16 years. It's almost impossible. So that most likely, it doesn't work. I always tell people when they come, yes, you can, but you're not going to benefit with it. I'd advise you to look for other quicker ways to get yourself legal. Now, to answer your second question about kids, for immigration purposes, a kid is, they consider, I know the universal here in the US is after 18, you're an adult. But for immigration, they consider you an adult when you get 21. So even though they're 18, they can't file for you. They have to get 21. That is why when they apply for you, if you're applying for a kid, even if they get 18, you can still apply for them as a kid, as long as they're not married, up until they're 21. When they get 21, then at that time they age out, they're considered adult to be on their own. So just to make sure, because you said that over 18, so they need to be 21 to file for you. The quickest way and the best way, and I mean this from my own experience, I've done hundreds of those in 10 years. And none of them that I've done a parent-child application, as long as you do your packaging right, submit what needs to be done, none of my applications have ever been called for an interview. For the parent-child, I'm able to get them without doing an interview. As long as you follow the guideline I tell you, the checklist I give you, the stuff I tell you to provide, we are able to beat this really quick. The last application I've done in the last 4 years, all my parent-child relationship applications, all of them have been approved in less than 6 months, on all of them. So it all comes down to packaging. And let me say this, when you get into some of this legal stuff, try and get an attorney who's experienced, because experience with the attorney is everything. Is everything. I've seen some attorneys have filed, they've been called, but it boils down to how you did your packaging and submitting everything. And I also say that because human beings are human beings. We are in a situation where Trump is coming, immigration is the big thing. You will see some attorneys who do other stuff all of a sudden want to switch and do immigration. They forget these technicalities, like the way I've told you about the sibling. You'll get an attorney who wants to take your money will tell you, yes, let's go ahead, we can file. But they forget there's more technicality, and the likelihood of you benefiting from it is less. So instead of taking your money, I tell you look for other ways, because there are other ways you can, navigate your way quicker than spending your money, me giving you false hope that you will one day benefit from that sibling application, and you don't. I know some attorneys are like, hey, you paid me to do the job, I do my part, that's your own thing. But I'm not like that. I will tell you, I'd rather walk away from your money, but I'll tell you, you will not benefit from it down the line. But it works. If you have siblings back home in Kenya, I've been here for what? I've been in this country now for 21 years. I wish I had filed for my sibling when because I got my green card within 3 years of getting here, within 5 years. By now, my family would be coming, but I didn't think about it then. With time runs. If you have siblings, apply for them. But again, talk to an attorney, because there's also a technicality why I did not apply for my sibling. And this is where I say, an experienced attorney who knows what they're doing. The technicality is this. If I apply for my siblings in Kenya, they will never get a visiting visa, right? So why do I want to lock down my siblings for 16 years, 18 years, that they can't visit me here? They're better off taking their chance with a visiting visa, and they may come here quicker, and once they land here, we can figure out a way to navigate. Do you see what I'm talking about? That's why I say, getting an experienced attorney who knows what they're doing in immigration, and this comes with years of also practicing, because these are things I've also learned in between the technicalities, what to do, what not to do, and how to help clients. But yes, the parent-child is the quickest. Let me ask you something. Do you know why all these Hispanics, the first thing they learn within the first year they get their kids? Because they know one day that kid will be the one who will file for you. And I've done quite a lot of them with the Kenyans, and it works like a charm. It's one of the easiest, safest, as long as you know what you're doing.
After this, but thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to share with us. Yes. All right. Let's stand up for the great.